Thank you again for your time. Next, we have a panel, and this is an important discussion on West Coast offshore wind energy developments, moderated by Darrell Kalika. And the panel is Chief Doug Barrett, Chairman TJ Green, Councilmember Jaytuk Stenruck, and Executive Director Megan Roca. I hope I got those names right. So let's welcome them with a warm round of applause.
There's 4 of you, right? Yes.
I see 3.
There's 4 of you. Yes. Doug, why don't you sit here and then we'll have our other 3 over here. Yes. Yes. Sit here. I'll be sitting with you. They are on. All right, great. All right. Hi there. Thank you. Thank you for allowing us a few moments. Who was up here last? Brian. Brian, I didn't know you were that much taller than me. But good morning. How are you all doing? Come on, you can do better than that. You just had a break. Good morning. How are you all doing? I like it. There we go.
Great, teacher.
So I just want to say thank you again. My name's Darrell Kalika. I'm a citizen of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, and I also work as a consultant with ATNI on water policy. Used to do energy, so this is a great nexus between the 2 issues that I get to work with ATNI and work on behalf of all of you on. So before I transition into this panel, I just wanted to make one shout out and acknowledgement about the video that Brian just showed to all of you, featuring Kian Singer. Kian was also a 3-time participant in our Youth Tribal Water Summit here at ATNI. Not that our Water Summit was ever intended to be a feeder to the University of Oregon, but we've had 10 students who've gone through our Water Summit program land at the University of Oregon. So some of you may have in your packets one of these. Kian's the youth that's featured on the canoe there are 2 of these. There are two versions of this, but some of you may have that version with Kian on it. So again, it's just this connection that we are all a community in support of each other. But it's through this work that I've been able to help support and do with ATNI in relation to water, energy, and all of that. And this last fall, I got the privilege of working with the West Coast Ocean Alliance to put together their Tribal Leaders Summit. And of course, one of the most prominent topics during that summit was why we're all here and why our guests are all here this morning to talk about offshore wind. And again, this sort of new era in dealing with energy and energy issues, and how much of that infrastructure development often falls on our backs and our resources that we've been stewards to since time immemorial, or if we want to put a number to that, 16,000, anywhere from 10,000 to 16,000 years that we've been tending and stewarding these resources. And so as I've been thinking about this, and as I continue to hear about the offshore wind development and issues facing that, it reminds me a lot of considering yesterday. And how many of you were not here yesterday? A handful of you. So yesterday morning, we had our panel on dam removal. And so coming from the Columbia River, I'm thinking about the issues that faced us 100 years ago with development of hydropower and the efforts to energize the West for expansion, nation building, industry, and so forth. And in terms of thinking about what that infrastructure development was the development of the Federal Columbia River Power System. And the conversations and the lack of consultation and coordination, that wasn't even a term at that time, to integrate how the power system was going to look for all of us. This is also the same era that legislation in the Missouri River and the Big Dam era and books like Damned Indians came out. And so I think of all of this. Think about the efforts that conversations that could have taken place. So now fast forwarding to today as I'm listening to the conversations around offshore wind and the push, oops, this is not my thing, but listening to the conversations around energy development and what that looks like, and trying to reconcile multiple competing factors from climate change to clean energy to providing new options and getting off of fossil fuels, but also taking into consideration what are we actually doing? And are we taking the time to think through these things in a way that is thoughtful and contemplative of all of our issues and consider all of that? So my goal today is to help moderate this robust panel of very wise folks on the issue of offshore wind. And it's great that with the help of our ATNI team that we've been able to put this together. Shout out to the Natural Resources co-directors and Amber and Becky for helping work on this, Taylor and Tanya. So I'm just the benefactor of getting to moderate this conversation, but what I'd like to do is open the opportunity for our panelists to introduce themselves and maybe share some brief comments on why this topic is important to you. So we'll start on this side, and then we'll work our way this direction.
Nishina Sayusla One H and H, Doug Barrett, Confederated Tribes, Kuslo Ramkwa Sayusla Indians. I'm the newly elected chief, and why we're here is to talk about energy that's not going to hurt our ecosystem. So that's my concern, is I'm trying to fight for our salmon, our lamprey, our killer whales, and clean water. We need to have clean water, and I don't know if you know, but I just watched a video of what happens up in the permafrost is melting and turning water orange. So there's another thing to look at down the road. Hey.
Hello, everybody. My name is Megan Rocha, and I'm the Executive Director for the Polyclaw Tribe of Yurok People, formerly known as Rezagini Rancheria. The tribe's located in far northern California, near the mouth of the Klamath River, and ancestral territory extends along the coast from Damnation Creek down to Little River. And within the tribe's constitution, they do claim the Pacific Ocean within their ancestral lands and waters. So the first lease that has been sold in California or on the West Coast is in Humboldt Bay. There's 2 leases there in Humboldt Bay, and then 3 down in Morro Bay. And so those ones in Humboldt are within Yurok ancestral territory, and so the tribe has really been kind of on the front lines of trying to understand what offshore wind means and how to have a say in the process so that it doesn't impact tribal fisheries, the ocean itself, cultural lifeways, and cultural resources. So thank you for having me here today to share a little bit.
And Delahan Hagiasham, Shuhushi Jaytek Steinreich, Talawadeni Nation, Tribal Council Treasurer. Hello and good morning. My name is Jaytek Steinreich, and I'm representing the Talawadeni Nation today. I would just like to, acknowledge my fellow council members in the crowd, our chair, Jerry Lynn Thompson, our secretary, Debbie Boardman, and council member, Dorothy Waite. This is my first ATNI conference, so it's good to see new faces and see all the people in the room and get to know the concerns and issues in Indian country, especially in the Northwest. Give you guys some background. We're just north of the Yurok tribe there in Little Del Norte County, Northern California, is where our tribal seat is in Smith River, California, but our ancestral territory extends into Oregon, from Wilson Creek to the south to the Sixes River to the watersheds of Applegate and the Rogue. So this is a major concern to us. Like she said, there's leases already going on the West Coast south of us in Humboldt County, and then there's a couple, to our neighbors in the north. They're the Coos people in Coos Bay, and then right off the coast of Brookings, which is right there in our territory. And it's a concern that we have, not knowing, how to protect our cultural resources, how to protect our ocean, and the cultural resources involved in there. It's significant to our people and all of us, actually. It all, like the Sea to Summit that Darrell was talking about, everything's connected from the peaks to the streams, to the rivers, to our ocean. And one of our major concerns is not being consulted with effectively in the beginning. And that is one of our major concerns. We're not sitting at the table to make the decisions. We're just being told what is going on and how to react to it, not sit down and make conscious decision makings with the folks that are going to affect what I believe is the most beautiful stretch of coastline on the earth. But I'll end there and let this gentleman introduce himself.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name's TJ Green. I'm chairman for the Makah Tribal Council. We're on the very northwestern tip of Washington State, if you don't know where that is. We have the 1855 Treaty in Nia Bay, and the main part of that treaty involves the ocean. We're ocean-going people. It provides for our spiritual, cultural existence, and it provides for our economic well-being as well in today's world and society. And so our interests are on the ocean. We have interest from the Sakhalin Islands to Baja California. We are whaling people. The migration, that's the migration path of the gray whale. And a lot of whales transit that area along the California current system. So we have a vast interest and have invested a lot of resources in what's going on offshore wind. So I look forward to this panel and having a great discussion today. Thank you for the invitation, and it's good to see everyone here. Sure.
Thank you, panelists, for your introductions, and you can hold on to that mic, TJ. We'll start on that end and come back this direction. So again, you can all see that we've got a diversity of tribes along the entire west coast of the U.S. and at least in the lower 48 portion. But what I'd like to ask you is, as we've been hearing about consultation, the value of consultation, what that looks like, what are your sentiments about the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management's consultation process with the tribes thus far? And do you feel like BOEM has respected the comments from the tribes?
So we've probably consulted with BOEM more than anyone else in the nation. We've been doing this for over 3 years now. The Makah tribe has immediately began asking for consultations when offshore wind came about. We were engaged in ocean processes prior to this. We saw some of this, as others in the room were probably a part of Marine Spatial Planning and the West Coast Ocean Alliance and all these different forums, that it was clear that the federal government was zoning the ocean for other uses. Well, here it is. It's offshore wind, and it's moving at a very rapid pace. And so what we've found out in those 3 years of consultation is that their process, they didn't put a lot of work into defining a process and to even educating themselves about their trust responsibility to tribes and people affected by their decisions. They have an executive mandate, and America the Beautiful provides goals for the administration and for the federal agencies to try to develop a certain amount of offshore wind in a certain amount of time. And so what we've learned is that they're going to do that, basically hell or high water is how it's been presented. We've consulted with 2 different directors at BOEM, and when we put forward requests for informations and asking them to dive into deeper detail about the science of the process, they're very non-responsive to those requests. They don't have the information. They're developing the information. we've even heard at times, well, we'll figure that out, and if we find something's not working, we'll change it. And we all know that that's not acceptable. We've been through that, right? We have the dams, we have endless stories of how we are decimated and how our resources, cultural, spiritual, and natural resources are decimated by those type of activities. So, with that little bit of background, our sentiments about the BOEM consultative process is that it's inadequate. It's not inclusive of their trust responsibility to uphold our treaty rights and our sovereign rights as Indigenous people and federally recognized tribes in that process. So, we think they need to do better. We have suggestions on how they can do better. We want to help them do better. And that's that's where we're at right now. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us. This is something that's moving really fast, and I don't see the brakes getting put on it anytime soon, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I'd just like to, our same concerns is what, McCaw has, and it's just not enough time and the financial, burden that tribes are taking on. We've reiterated in talks with BOEM and other agencies that, we don't have the capacity within our staff to follow all these requests, and we just don't have the time or the money, and we put already full plates even on top of each other, and you guys all understand that. I think we all are on the same lines of that when it comes to capacity with our staff and following these issues. Daily they come in, email requests and requests from BOEM, but it's just not effective. We weren't at the decision-making table from the beginning, so it seems like we're an afterthought. And that's concerning to me because I've grown up as a steward of the ocean and it being part of my life, and how are we supposed to protect it if we don't, not even sitting down and making those decisions? One thing that's hard is just having to live with it. Like he's saying, it's moving at a fast pace. And I asked the questions. I was recently reelected in 23 to council, but prior to that I was in the Natural Resources Department as staff, and it's just hard for me to understand why, on a norm, like a logical standpoint on how they can't listen to us, or they won't listen to us. It's not that they're not listening to us, our words aren't being effectively implemented into change. And I think that's the hard part for me. When we tell our federal agencies that they have this trust responsibility to change, they nod their head, but in the end they don't really do anything. They say, oh, well, this is what they want. This is what the government wants, or the president has set this forward, and this is what's going to happen. And it's hard for me, and I reiterate it wherever I go. Why is rural America always having to take our resources to benefit the metropolitan areas of this country? And now you're going to take an undeveloped section of the waters of the West Coast and destroy that beauty and that view shed, and that we don't know the impacts of what these wind turbines are going to do. And it's just like the dam removals. That was a good idea then, 100 years ago, to provide power, to provide water. But now we're looking at the environmental impacts We need to look at this now, not my kids' generation when they're my age or my grandkids. It's now. And when we reiterate that, they don't have the answers. They said, well, we'll figure it out. Well, we can't figure it out because, our oceans are in dire need of our help as human beings and people, and this just adds to another problem I see in the ocean, because we're not looking at the whole picture. I understand we need to, reduce fossil fuel, but nobody talks about, the reduction of energy. We just talk about how we can provide more. And so, it's frustrating when we go to these meetings and we've gone back as lobbyists to DC and talk to the director of BOEM, and they hear us, but they're not willing to change. They're not willing to talk to the higher ups and say, hey, let's take a step back. How about we look at this has happened on the East Coast, and we've had talks with the East Coast tribes. Let's give it 10, 15 years, see what develops there, and then maybe move forward on other spots. Because I feel like, by the time we get done, it'll be too late and it'll be implemented and our resources affected. So I'll hand it over to my...
My understanding on the East Coast, from what East Coast tribes shared, was that they were really consulted only in a Section 106 sort of means, right? So it was very limited there. I think BOEM has learned from that process and understood that on the West Coast, it's much more, right? You have to consult on all matters and not just Section 106 and HPA purposes. However, in terms of the leases off of California that have already been sold, my understanding was there was no consultation that occurred prior to those being sold. I know certainly the tribe I work for was not consulted in that process. So didn't really have any opportunity to have input on where they're located, how that may impact tribal fisheries and other concerns, and really just now have to deal with now the developers, which is another serious flaw in this process, is BOEM is requiring the developers to create Native American communication plans and putting it on the developer to talk with the affected tribes to identify how their construction and operation plan should be implemented. So they're really sort of stepping back and saying, yeah, we have a trust responsibility, but only on the sale of the lease, and then you go deal with industry. Well, we all know that industry is never going to have the best interests in mind for tribal concerns, right? They're there to make money. So that has been, I think, a serious flaw in this process. And the feds need to step up and make sure that they are, committed to their obligations. I would say also, similar experience meeting with BOEM representatives. They listen, but it really doesn't affect their decision making. And I think it's disheartening to learn, for example, they modified the Coos Bay lease area, I understand, because of DOD's interests. They've modified the potential lease areas in Central California because of National Marine Sanctuary's interests. But to my knowledge, they have not modified any of the lease areas because of tribal concerns. And so I think that's also just disheartening to understand that they are willing to listen to some, but not tribes. I'll say, too, California is in a unique situation because the feds, yes, this is a federal policy, and they have extreme goals they're trying to meet. California does as well. And so it almost feels like we're getting overrun double time, essentially, because California also has very ambitious goals for offshore wind. And they are actually leading the way, which is the other map, I think, this one. if I can see correctly, they led a process to identify where the new call areas are going to go. So California is stepping into federal waters to help identify areas that then BOEM can look to lease. So California is also really driving this a lot, which is very difficult. And, you know, they've asked for input. I believe at least 9 tribes provided input. I know that, you know, we certainly put input to say we do not want to see a lease area off of Del Norte County, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond to those comments and if they actually modify them at all. So one other thing I think to note, well, 2 things I'll say. One is I understand the Government Accountability Office is actually doing an investigation currently into BOEM's engagement with tribes in offshore wind. And so if you have an opportunity or interest to reach out to them, they are looking to speak with tribes to better understand how BOEM is really kind of failing in this process. So hopefully something productive will come out of that. Secondly, Darrell mentioned the West Coast Ocean Alliance, which, you know, brings together the 3 states, Washington, Oregon, and California, as also many of the federal agencies and all the tribes within the West Coast that are interested in participating. And I think that's a really strong opportunity for tribes to align in opposition. Nearly all of the tribes that participate in the West Coast Ocean Alliance have come out in opposition of offshore wind. And I think like anything, the more tribes that can stand together, the voice is going to be louder and maybe affect change. And one of those direct asks out of the Tribal Caucus of the West Coast Ocean Alliance is to develop a West Coast regional science body where tribes would really be at the decision-making table in terms of the science impacts. So, yeah, I think that's... So I would just say, you know, keep consulting. I think sometimes, though, there's this fear, you know, it's like you want to consult with the federal agency. Certainly you need to be heard, but sometimes it's also really discouraging when you look in NEPA documents and sort of see the list of meetings they've had, and it looks really like, great, they've been talking to everybody, right? And it's impressive looking. They've done their job, but they have to do more than just meet and listen, right? They have to actually act on what tribal leadership is saying, and we all know that they're really failing in that regard.
Thank you for that too. We're not against green energy, as long as it doesn't hurt our ecosystem. And you know, consultation is a one-way street from what we've been doing with BOEM. It's we get the same email back, we can't do anything. And we've wrote numerous letters, we've had consultation with even Director Klein, and the comment, she can't do nothing about it. It's a mandate, they're pushing it down, and we're going to do it. Our concern is speaking for the animals that can't speak for themselves. We need to, we're worried about our salmon, our lamprey, all the beings out in the ocean, you know, the killer whales. They're on the endangered species. The killer whale babies are dying because there's no Chinook salmon for them to eat. And there's not enough of them to take the numbers down for the sea lions who's killing the salmon. So, you know, it's a circle that's out of balance. And we're concerned about that out of balance, and they're not concerned. West Coast lawyer got up and said, are you going to wait till our right whales are completely dead before you do anything about it? You know? And so it's concern because the trust responsibility of the federal government is lacking. And it's our responsibility to take care of our oceans, our waters, and everything is in it. And so a comment made by somebody off the record that if we have to lose a couple species to push this through, it's okay. That was really concerning when I heard that. It was like, what do we do? We're gonna, you know, we didn't want to go against this process, but we felt we had an obligation that we had to say no. we kept telling, I kept telling Bowen, please stay away from the Hasita Banks. It's one of our best fishing up there possible. The California current brings everything up there, and they're still going to consider putting it as the south end of the banks, which is probably our old village sites. It used to be a mountain range. You know, they're not going to care when they come in with the transmission lines who they're digging up or why they're digging them up. We've already heard from the East Coast that the lobsters the larvae are getting deformed because of the transmission lines. Well, what's going to happen to our shrimp, our crabs, everything else? My nephew's a commercial fisherman, and he's concerned because that's where he drags his shrimp net. That's where he fishes for crab. So all the fishing industry was not consulted until they started writing letters. Listen to us, listen to us. They tried the same thing with wind energy, or wave energy in the beginning. And the fishermen said, you guys haven't even talked to us. You know, people's lives depend on fishing in the ocean. And we all the tribes on the coast, we've written letters, numerous letters. Washington State is next. And so the Washington tribes have also written a letter to their governor saying, please include us in these conversations because we know we're next. You know, what can you do to stop this thing from rolling? We can't stop it. It's going to happen. But they need to consult with us. And just sending us an email saying that we can't do nothing about it is not consulting with the tribe. They just check their box. And that, to me, is not the way to consult. So, and I agree with what everybody's already said. You guys covered most of it, so thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go a little off script here because Sharon gave me a note, and it spurred a thought. We have a really valuable opportunity while we're sitting here at ATNI. JTUC, you mentioned this is your first ATNI, but this is such an important place. You think about historically in the last, how old is ATNI now, Amber? 70 years. 70 years what we've been able to influence as a coalition of tribes. The second oldest intertribal organization in the country, but one of the most renowned in the nation in terms of our ability as a region to work together. So I'm going to, pardon me, Tanya and Taylor, but I'm going to ask this question. In terms of thinking about the opportunity to do some of that support and coalition building amongst ATNI tribes, can you share a little more with us as a background? Again, all of us value water. We value our fisheries and the interconnectedness, especially our anadromous fisheries that make their way from places like the headwaters of the Columbia out migrate in the ocean and spend time there. That's a species that connects us all, and then those species are interconnected to the ocean, our lands, and so forth. So if you could share with us a little bit more of an explanation of what exactly BOEM is. Now, BOEM is housed within Department of Interior. Am I correct? Yes, Department, and we just got done hearing from an arm of Department of Interior, but also gives kind of a glimpse or look behind the curtain to see what all is in Interior and what's happening and where their strengths and weaknesses. But if you could share a little bit more with us just in background and concept, especially for our tribes that are further inland, the connection that we all have, not just as consumers and customers of some of these resources, but a little more background on what BOEM is and those impacts, or what's being proposed to us. And I'll let you volunteer, whoever wants to take a stab at answering that.
Yes, so BOEM's the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management, and they're responsible for leasing, right, in federal waters. And then they now have a sister agency, BESI, which is the Bureau of something Safety. And they're going to be the ones responsible of actually, once the turbines are in place, of making sure that they're being operated in a safe manner. So. In terms of other context, I can just say, like I mentioned, there's 5 leases already that have been sold in California. and they're looking to add additional lease areas in Northern California, and that's principally because they cannot put them within national marine sanctuaries, and a good stretch of California is a national marine sanctuary. There's multiple ones that all, connect. And so that's sort of another issue, again, to the council members' comment about rural America kind of, or, the North Coast is going to be taking up this, burden for the rest of California, really. But also don't just think of the lease areas, right? That's one piece. You also have to bring all of that power to shore and get it to the cities. So there's also, complementing this is a massive undertaking to upgrade transmission lines. And so, that is going to be extremely disturbing, or major disturbance, I should say, on land as well, to try to upgrade those transmission lines to get to the metropolitan areas. So this is a project on an immense scale, and with significant cost associated with it, and without really also an explanation of what power is going to be sort of decommissioned also. And I think that's another interesting point to this is, they still don't even have the technology for floating offshore wind yet. And you have to understand, obviously, the West Coast is very different than the East Coast. And so I think that's another piece of this is the technology has to come along at the same pace. But what we're also being told is that these turbines, the project will likely only be for 25 years. So is this intense amount of disturbance and infrastructure and money worth such a short lifespan for what it's really going to produce? So I'm sure that, the chairman has more context, but.
No, I think you covered that well. I wouldn't add anything as to what BOEM and Bessie are, other than I think what kind of gave rise to them and kind of motivated the government that they need these agencies was like Deepwater Horizon down in the Gulf. Those type of events are what spurred the need for agencies like this to play a role in how energy is developed in the ocean. So.
Okay. Well, in terms of thinking that, you've all mentioned some various aspects with regard to energy, and thank you, Megan, for mentioning and reminding us about not only the generation of the electricity, but also the transmission of it from rural into urban centers. Some of you talked about the capacity that's going to be required to address the potential development, leasing, siting, et cetera, of the projects themselves, but also the transmission lines that are going in. And you've also mentioned concerns over the inadequate nature of sort of the consultation, coordination with the tribes, the rapid nature of this, and then also sort of the life of some of these projects. But if you could just share with us a bit about, so if you had a magic wand, what would be your ideal in this situation, but also in terms of addressing it, that these projects may and likely will happen in various places. What is needed? What do your tribes need?
If I had a magic wand, protect our waters. I mean, our waters water is life for us and all things. So, it's hard to predict what kind of damage this is going to happen coming in, what it's going to do to our fisheries. I would say protect all of our fisheries, protect all of our animals, mammals, everything out in the ocean and our waters. I mean, Kat Brigham also said something about when our salmon come down the Columbia and out the ocean, their salmon, our salmon are all connected. Our salmon go clear up to British Columbia and back. So they do a heck of a travel. And this is going to interfere somehow with some of it. We can't say it's going to be a fact it's going to kill our salmon and kill our whales and do all this, but to save those species that are struggling right now, I asked up at Muckleshoot, can somebody throw $1 billion at bringing our salmon and our lamprey back first before you start doing this that could cause more problems with it? My nephew's a commercial fisherman again, and you know, he's got concerns about paying off his boat, paying his crew. What could happen? Those shrimp are out there in those areas, and me being a commercial fisherman for a long time, I keep wondering how they're going to anchor these things out, you know, 10, 12 miles out in the ocean in sand, that they're going to hopefully stay there in 20-foot seas and 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds. I don't see how they're going to stay standing myself, but you know, that's for them to figure out. But what's going to happen when they fall over and go to the bottom? They're not going to have the means to pull them out and fix them. And the ones up on land all leak oil too. So I don't know how they're going to stop the oil leaks in the ocean. You know, that's my other concern. So.
Yeah, and I'll more speak to what the tribal government needs and more in terms of engaging. So capacity is huge, right? So we're a small tribe and, you know, a small staff. And the extreme burden that this process has put on staff is just unbelievable. It's hard to even really, oh, thank you. I mean, I can just tell you, you know, being a small tribe as the executive director, I'm responsible for everything. We don't have a housing director. We don't have a transportation director. We don't have economic. It's like that all falls on me. And so now this, you know, effort that is going on, the amount of meetings, so it's engaging with BOEM, right, in multiple ways. On the state side, we have the California Public Utilities Commission that we have to engage with. We have the California Energy Commission. We have local groups that are forming. We have the West Coast Ocean Alliance that is forming to deal with this. You know, just the amount of sort of engagement that's required to even try to be heard. Then you think about on the National Historic Preservation Act side and the NEPA side, they are doing environmental, they're going to do a programmatic EIS for all of California, so that's one process that you have to have input on. Then they're going to do individual ones for each lease area, so that's another process to engage in. And just, you know, having very short timelines to respond to things, 30 days, et cetera, is extremely difficult. The AB 525 report, or 525 report that California put out, you know, was 500 pages, and you had 30 days to basically review that and have input. So I think that's a major issue, is just capacity, and the federal government not providing any funding for us to build staff to actually engage in this process. And the state is not doing that either. So I think that's a huge piece to this. And just one more thing I'll say, the more time that, you know, staff is spent engaging in this, we're taking away from the time that we could be served, you know, meeting the needs of tribal citizens, right? So the people at the end of the day end up being impacted just because we are not there to be able to deliver and grow the programs and services that most benefit the people. And so I think that's another huge disservice of this whole process, is all of our attention is now getting diverted to be defensive and not be able to be proactive to serve the people.
I guess I got to think about my words here. If I had a magic wand, what would it look like? Personally, from my point of view, I'd like to see it closer to those metropolitan areas. And I've been told, excuse me, I've been told that they can't do that because of these national marine sanctuaries, especially in California. And I tell them, well, our area is a national marine sanctuary. It's just not designated. You know, in our eyes, in our people, that is a protected area, and that's how you need to view it. Just logically speaking, I'm a logical guy. You know, it's going to take less taxpayer money unless consumer money, because we're all going to pay for this. It's not going to come from some magic pot of money out there. We'll in the end be paying this as taxpayers. So me personally, if I had a magic wand, it'd be right out there in front of San Francisco Bay. Their infrastructure is already there. They've already destroyed that bay. So why go destroy another section of our coast? And then the transmission lines, our area is not adequate to take this amount of power. And then from research and then, questions and asking, this power is going to bypass our community. So, ideally, I'd like to see, us somehow get that energy before it goes by us, either north of us or south of us. Like Megan said, we're a larger tribe than them numbers-wise, but our capacity is small. This falls on literally like 2 to 3 people on staff. Our TIPO, our self-governance, natural resources department director, and staff there, and we just don't have we need a new person. We need a full-time person that can take this on and follow all of these comment periods. So it's, we're not leaving something behind, because if you miss a meeting or you miss Zoom now, then it seems like you fall back that much farther and you got to play catch up. and people just don't have the time to do that. I would like to see, if these developers have $150 million just to throw at a study that they don't even know if it's going to work, then they have enough money to fund all of us, natural resources staff, fully. If they can if there's that big of money there, might be my view is, if this is going to happen, then show us the money that we need to follow these issues. And every species is of concern to us. I want to see a more robust environmental plan for every species, from the plankton. Plankton's important. It's the most bottom food for the circle of life out there in the food chain in the ocean. And if we don't have that, then we don't have the forage fish to feed our salmonids and our salmon and that kind of thing, along with our marine mammals and the birds. All of it's connected. And so I'd like to see, I don't like to hear, we'll lose a couple more species, for this to happen. No, we've lost enough, over the last 200 years. We don't need to lose another one. That's where would my magic wand would be, and I'll hand it over to Chairman.
Thank you all for your comments. I think they're great. I want to, I'll answer that, but I do want to, I see we're probably, what time are we ending? Noon? You're fine. We're good? Okay. All right. Well, you asked for it then. So, I think, I wanted to be able to state, Macaw, we approach this from a neutral standpoint. We understand that there's a need for energy transition. We need to reduce our carbon. We have climate change issues that are affecting our resources as well, and we want to have solutions to that. Macaw's been a part of that. We're not against those types of solutions. I see our planner is in the room. Bud Denny, can you wave at me, please? All right, Bud Denny's over there. So 24 years ago, Bud was working on a clean energy project, a wave energy project, and we got our first. I think we were the first tribe in the nation to get a FERC permit to be able to develop energy from the ocean, you know. So these types of things are things that we're willing to explore in a responsible manner. You know, we found that we weren't able to get that project. The technology wasn't there yet. It still isn't. They're still working on it, you know, 24 years later. And like you said, you know, the technology doesn't exist for these offshore wind platforms, yet we're permitting them. We're going through a permitting process on a technology that doesn't even exist. Those things are just ridiculous, and it's frustrating. And so where I see, you know, if I had a magic wand to try to affect those sort of things we continually deal with, you know, our treaty interests, our interests as federally recognized tribes and indigenous people that have these inherent rights should be written into things like our national energy policy. It should be center and forefront of those sort of things. The Outer Continental Shelf Act, we're deliberately not in there for a reason, you know, because of these types of things. You know, that paternal nature to do what's, you know, what they think's in our best interest, but also what's in the interest of national security. How many of our tribes continually bump up against that answer when we're trying to fight for our treaty rights? You know, we have national security interests, and we get the raw end of the deal on that. And so, you know, those are the bigger areas, I think, that, you know, if I had a magic wand and we could be included in at that level, at that high of a level, I think it would solve a lot of the issues we're facing right now. And then, you know, the other things that were mentioned here, you know, are certainly important. Tribes' capacities are terribly limited, and ours is no different. You know, we're probably better than a lot in terms of this area. Because we have staffed our natural resources deliberately because they're so important to Makah. Yeah, we have about 80 people that are in our natural resources and environmental departments and at any time they can be brought to bear on these types of issues, and they are right now for offshore wind energy, as well as our council. I had 2 council that were just down in Sacramento last week attending a meeting. I mean, we're going to D.C., we're going to California multiple times this year already, meeting with Department of Energy, and it's wearing us thin. And you know, this panel for as an example of that, you know, me as the chairman, certainly a busy. My schedule's demanding, and because this issue is important, and this organization, as it's been mentioned, is a great organization that has a lot of influence. You know, I wanted to make sure I'm here to be able to speak to Makah's interests and learn what the other concerns are, you know, from the tribes that are members here, because this is a big issue. And so I drove down last night, got here about 1 in the morning, and then I gotta go home because I have a couple daughters that are pregnant. I got 6 daughters, 3 sons, and 20 grandkids, and 2 on the way. And so yeah, I'm doing my part to make the world green again, right? So that's my dad joke, Bud. Bud loves dad jokes. So. But yeah, I got a daughter that's she's due any minute. I could get a phone call here and have to try to get home for that. So, but you know, this is my job, and this issue is important, and I have all those grandkids and a great grandkid on the way. So that's how important it is to our tribe. That's how important it is to me. You know, that I show up, that I'm present, that I engage, so that we have a chance in what's going on in this issue. And I think there's 2 things going on. You know, like I said, there's the need to address climate change. You know, that's one. You know, that's the one that can gain a lot of support, right? You know, we all see that in our areas. We know there has to be something done. You know, the other thing that's going on that I feel is a lot more an underlying part of that is is in this energy transition is an economic transition. There's an economic impact to what's going on here. Transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable energies, and this offshore wind is playing a role, and there's enormous investment that's being done. These offshore wind companies have been very aggressive in how they do their outreach and contacts, and very intentional in the people they hire. You know, they hire people that have relationships with us, that know us, that have worked for us or advocated for us at some point in time, so they can influence our internal politics. That's what's going on here. I had to issue a directive throughout my organization that none of our employees engage, speak, talk, or take calls from people from offshore wind energy companies. It's that bad. I'm not kidding you. It's that bad. That's what's going on, and it's frustrating and troubling, and it's never ending, because there's a lot of money behind it, and there's a lot of investment that's already happened, and we have an administration that's made up his mind, is what it seems like. And so, you know, we have to come together in some manner and identify, you know, those points that we can, you know, we can affect that policy that's just being shoved down our throats right now. And so I'll pause there and see what's left, but I could probably talk all day on this if you let me.
Thank you. Thank you for those words. And from each of you. So at this time, I just would like to, on behalf of ATNI and our natural, well, actually all of our programs, to express, and our leadership and board and our member tribes, to thank each one of you for participating today. I know that you're taken away from your families, tribes, and communities, and the work that you do. And so I'd like to just offer my gratitude to you, Chief Barrett, to you, Director Rocha, as well as you, Councilman Steinruck and Chairman Green, for taking the time and the effort and traveling here to share your words and perspectives with us on an issue that is ever present now, that we have an opportunity to affect and bring light to in terms of the government-to-government relations. So at this time, I'm going to hand things over to you, Amber. No, she's got gratitude. Yes. Yes, we can take, somebody said we had noon, but I'm ready to go. Question. 12:15? Okay, yes, we time.
Aaron Hockaday, Kuruk Tribe. Thank you guys for you guys. I've been listening to you guys for the last 3 years and been to the same meetings you have. And the Kuruk Tribe was notified 3 years ago that this was happening. It was happening. It just told us it was happening when I was in Sacramento 3 years ago, from almost a month ago. And I just want to let you know, we're in the middle of the Klamath River, and how it affects us is that we just took down 4 dams. And the migrating of the salmon that I talked about yesterday, that just went out a year ago, it's going to affect those salmon and the lamprey and the sturgeon that come back in, going across those electrical wires that are coming in at the mouth of the Klamath and above the Klamath. And another thing, how it hurts our tribe, is we can see those power plants from our sacred sites, from our medicine sites in the high country. I can see the one in Humboldt County, and I can see the one off into the Brookings area. We can see them perfectly out in the ocean if they go out, if they go up. We'll be able to see them for our parasites. So that's how it affects us inland. And looking at all the people that's on that list today, and all the tribes on that list that I see that's here, that are part of this committee, this organization, it's going to affect you guys. It's going to affect everyone. It's going to affect your water. It's going to affect your fisheries. It's going to affect everything. So as today, I would like to see here, and I'd like to see this committee form another committee to go against these guys, because as numbers, like I talked about yesterday, we got the numbers. And then, you know what? We have another thing we have. We have our sovereignty, and it's about time we stood up for that sovereignty to protect what's right. Because we don't, like you said, young man, and like I am, it's the future for my grandchildren. And that's what I talked about yesterday. It's the future of our grandchildren. I helped take out the biggest dam removal in the world for my grandchildren, and now he has to go out and take those things out of the ocean when he comes and takes my spot. Thank you.
I think he just called you young man, TJ.
Hey, my name is Ryan Jackson. I'm the self-governance coordinator from the Hoop Valley Tribe, former chairman and council member. I just have a couple of questions. First one is, where's the Secretary Howland at in all this? You know, you guys talk about consultation. You know, there's memos, there's presidential memos, there's executive orders. I mean, there's all kinds of you know, language out there that requires her to be at the table, especially as Secretary of Interior. She's been kind of a dud, in my opinion, as far as secretaries. I don't want to say them be nasty towards Secretary Howland, but the Hoop Valley Tribe, you know, supplied personal support for staff members and otherwise to get her to where she is now, to help her to get to where she is. She's done a lot of work on her own, but again, another thing is you guys talk about funding for these different positions. BOEM is a part of Interior. I'm not sure we've had any Title IV agreements, non-BIA agreements under Secretary Howland so far. Those are all discretionary. Everyone up here should be able to enter into a compact. I mean, BIA and Indian Health are mandatory. There's no doubt about those, but I think there's still only 5 non-BIA compacts in the nation. 3 Hoopa Yurok Karuk. Yurok might have another park one, and I think the Bison Range. But where's she at in all of this stuff? I mean, you guys should be able to get staff members just under her. She can simply sign that through her own pen. Anyway, those are questions I have. Thanks.
Can I just say a few? I think that's a great question and comment. You know, there have been attempts made by, I think, you know, certainly by McCaw and I know others to address exactly what you're saying. I think one of the orders that we're looking at really closely is Secretarial Order 3404, which basically, you know, directs interagency cooperation for tribal trust responsibility, you know, and that's not being done. It's not being done in this process, and Secretary Howland certainly has to address that and direct that to happen in this issue. And, you know, we hope to be able to get her ear on this. I have met with Assistant Secretary Brian Newland, on this issue, but still pending a meeting with the Secretary regarding what you just mentioned, and I think it does need to happen because there is some work to be done there. So thank you.
And I'll just add, after several tribes on the north coast of California came out in opposition, Secretary Howland came out that very next week to meet with tribal leaders. But really nothing changed from that. Every tribal leader voiced their concerns, and, you know, again, it felt very performative a little bit to just have her there to listen and then go back and continue the process as it's been laid out already. So, and regarding compact opportunities, so BOEM was on a panel at the last Tribal Self-Governance Conference a couple weeks ago, and they couldn't answer a very simple question about which program services, functions, and activities tribes could potentially compact from BOEM. They had no response at all, and so I think that is definitely something that self-governance tribes should be pressing them on and trying to get some of that funding to be involved in this work. So, and then the last thing I would just mention is, you know, there is a push for co-stewardship agreements, right? We're seeing it with certain federal agencies such as the Forest Service. And so we've also made that request to BOEM of how do we enter into a co-stewardship agreement with you so we have a stronger seat as in the decision-making process. And again, they sort of put their hands up a little bit and it's like, well, we've never done that. We don't even know how to go about that. So they, you know, don't really seem to have a clear means to implement the existing federal policies that are already there that could really help tribes, have a stronger, again, seat at the table in the decision-making process with offshore wind.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Actually, this is a comment and probably possibly a question. Leonard Forsman, Chairman, Squamish Tribe. I did go on an offshore wind tour in Europe. Probably said that before. The Port of Seattle is interested in the supply chain because there's a big supply chain for building and maintaining these offshore wind facilities, as you guys are probably well aware. And the blades are long, and you have to have laydown areas, and it was very complex. But over in Europe, of course, they have quite a few of these already installed and have replaced a lot of fishing, and towns that were usually fishing towns are now mainly based on the energy because the fishing had gone downhill and has kept their maritime industry going. So it was kind of interesting to see that. But the main thing is, as you guys are probably already aware, I'm stating the obvious, these have the potential for generating a ton of energy. So that's why there's a lot of push behind it. There's big promise, right? Well, the thing is that when I went to the conference in Denmark, it's almost all oil companies and oil energy companies that are investing in this and building these things. They've just diversified into it. It was kind of funny because one of them had built the wind farm out off of Scotland, and they said they haven't started generating it inland yet because they don't have the transmission infrastructure to do that. So they're just powering their oil drills that are still pumping oil offshore, so they don't have to use generators or whatever to generate that. I said, well, it seems like a good idea, but it's kind of enabling more oil extraction. So the reason I'm saying this is that we need to use our tribal sovereignty and our leverage to, muck up the gears of their permitting, however we can do that. Now, the Washington tribes have treaty fishing rights. We've got to make sure that those are, and I'm not sure about the Oregon tribes, but I know the Washington tribes do, so they have that leverage. And hopefully Interior doesn't set the precedent of permitting something over that, because I'm sure that there'll be action taken there. And if we can't stop them, or at least if we can't stop them or not stop them, or if we have to compromise, which we probably don't want to do, make sure there's mitigation, because there's going to be a lot of money generated through this. So if you can at least get mitigation to get, like you said, to get investment in the impacts, so the impacts can be mitigated, we need to start working towards that, because there's no shortage of money in these projects. And that's one of the things that's driving them. So if at least it's like make sure that they are compensating for the tribes. We don't like to sell out our treaty rights or our fishing rights or our culture or heritage, but those are decisions individual tribes have to make and take into consideration as they move forward. So that's all I had. Thanks.
So we have 4 more minutes. I want to get one more opportunity here as we close this panel. We have one more question. Do we have another question?
One more.
Two more questions. I'm going to ask you guys, board members, because it's above my pay grade.
Okay, comment real quick,
okay.
and then we'll do one more. Kat, did you want to say something?
I'm going to read Kat's notes. No, I talked to TJ and Glenn a little bit about this, with the offshore wind proposals. And I know some of our staff, and I know, Sharon, where you're going in the direction, but we have our watershed and our fisheries program managers at CRICFIC who are Yakima members, and they have concerns about, the monitoring efforts out in the ocean. And so, we talk about this when it comes to federal funding and what, we produce in the Columbia River Basin. And so this is something that is a concern to us. Looking at the West Coast Alliance, I know Umatilla is one of the members of that, but I would, talking with our chair, Corrine Sams at CRICFIC, we'd be happy to be a support and to be a part of that West Coast Alliance. And we have our commission meeting tomorrow, and this is something we bring to our board because we actually have an office in Astoria called the Coastal Margin Observation and Prediction Program, monitoring the estuary and the oceans. So this is brand new. We brought this on about 2 to 3 years ago. So this is pretty much the vision of our past leadership with, whatever goes on at headwaters, we have to be sure we monitor also out in the ocean, and so also with our genetics lab in Hagerman, Idaho. So this is all, in the efforts of the 4 tribes, again, with what we our hatchery productions, but not only just hatchery, but even our lamprey and we got smell, so forth. So these are of concerns because we talk about investment. Well, there's a huge amount of investment going to our Columbia River Basin restoration. So, we can't have things competing for, one another. And like Chairman Forsman said, it's about our treaty rights, our sovereignty, and, our natural resources are our cultural resources. And so that's something we must all put a lot of effort to. And even a campaign effort, I think, talking about BOEM deferring the consultation to the developer, that's the same crap we're dealing with at Yakima with rye development and FERC. So it's very frustrating. So here's a prime example. We don't have the staff in. You're right. It takes a lot of our time and effort, energy away from our everyday business, and we have to focus on all these energy proposals or other issues that are encroaching on our treaty rights. So we support your guys' efforts, and again, I'll bring this to our commission tomorrow. So thank you.
It's a good morning, good afternoon. Hi, TJ. I think, you guys made a great presentation. And one of my concerns is, first of all, my name is Kat Brigham. I am a Umatilla tribal member, not a representative, but I have a few questions. One is, yesterday during the Natural Resources Committee, one of the things we heard about is co-stewardship. And Department of Interior has co-management responsibilities, so we really should be pushing for co-management so that we are at the table. And we have, through this Special Tribal Advisory Committee, this is one of the priorities that we have identified, and we have told them that they need to work with the tribes, keep us involved. And so I guess they're not, like you said earlier, they're not listening to us, but maybe we need the united voice. All of us need to be saying, this is important. We need to be at the table. So where's the resolution? I know we had a resolution before, but maybe we need an updated one. But I thank you guys all for all your work and appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Appreciate it. It might be even worth taking to the Northwest Committee meeting at NCAI to discuss as well. So thank you all. Appreciate this panel for your time. Really appreciate the discussion. Let's give them one more round.